Before we get started, I would like to thank the brothers who donated the pork for this evening's dinner, and the Eastern Star, who provided the remainder of the food, prepared the dining room, and served us this evening. They have gone over and above to help us this year, and we want to thank you for everything you do. As I mentioned before, tonight is a special occasion. We have the honor of recognizing a truly special brother. As you'll see by the distinguished Mason speaking tonight, Rick's impact was felt well beyond our lodge. Just to give you a sense of Right Worshipful Richard A. Holt's Masonic dedication, I'll read you some of his accomplishments. Undoubtedly, I will miss some, but this will give you an idea of his love and commitment to Masonry. District Deputy Grand Master of the 22nd Masonic District in 1997. Grand Pursuivant, Grand Lodge of Florida, 2016. Lake Worth, Scottish Rite, 33rd degree, received October 13, 2016. And Worshipful Master of this lodge in 1988. Not to mention all the fundraising events, degrees, and other Masonic activities that Rick was involved in, and the accomplishment that meant the most to this lodge, and what we're recognizing him for tonight, the 25 years of dedication as secretary of this lodge. Rick was truly the rock of this lodge. He was there when I was raised 10 years ago, and I watched year after year as other officers changed. He continued to be a fixture in that chair. He served as a source of comfort and advice to the new Worshipful Master sitting in this chair year after year, and would always remind us of our duties and responsibilities as Masons. I could go on about Rick, but as a testament to him, we have several accomplished Masons that would like to say a few words of their own. At this time, Right Worshipful Paul Friend will say a few words.
A little bit taller. Thank you, Worshipful Master, first for allowing me to say some things about a dear brother. More than a dear brother, he was a dear friend. A lot of y'all know I'm in the insurance business, and I first met Ricky long before that, but I met Ricky in our old 26 North and South was such a special district we had, and we all get together every year. And the first lodge we went to in January was Harmonia Lodge. It was called the Lasagna Lodge, and they always had lasagna. This lodge was known for French fries. We used to come out here and have cheese grits and French fries. And I can remember, Mary Ann, you could correct me, he had an old red Toyota van. And he had everybody from this lodge come down to Harmonia Lodge. They were all together, him and Leonard and Gary Shears and Guy Priestley and all the old timers of this lodge. And here comes Big Rick and the rest of them. That was my first introduction to him. That was January 1986 when I became an officer at Acacia Lodge. But over the years we became friends. But the thing I want to tell you is a little bit more outside of Masonry tonight. Yeah, I followed him as district deputy, and we went to Keys together. We did a lot of things with the Masons. I'll never forget Grand Lodge. It's never been the same since we couldn't play Screw Your Neighbor the way we used to play it with quarters. Okay? Grand Lodge was always great because I don't care where we were at, and I'm going back to the late 80s. At Grand Lodge, we all get together and we play Screw Your Neighbor. J.W. would be there, and Gary Shears, myself, Guy Priestley, Scott Howe, Leonard Harper, and he could play, believe me. So we had a lot of fun. 1995, I went and got my insurance license. And I'm over in Fort Pierce Lodge in 1997. I just threw my license out at Ricky and said, look at there, I got licensed too, Ricky. And Ricky called me on Monday and says, I'd like to have you come work for me. I worked for Ricky for 5 years. And this is the part I want to tell you about Ricky Holt. He didn't get promoted with our job outside of being a staff manager. And I'm going to tell you, Ricky was honest. As a manager, he was honest. I can remember guys who got promoted down there at that company, and I watched them do some unethical things, but Ricky never did the unethical thing on the job. He always made sure if there was Application that came in, it wasn't signed. Hey, Paul, you got to take this back and get it signed. You didn't get this signature. And you'd say, oh, crap, okay, because it held up your paycheck. But he never would do some of the things other managers did that got promoted. I saw 2 managers go to regional vice president in that company that to this day I say, Ricky, you did the right thing. Always remember you had integrity. And that said a lot. Now I want to say something about him being secretary. I've been secretary of Vacation Lodge going on my 17th year. It's the most unappreciated job you got in the lodge. It really is. Mike, you're going to find out. Okay, I'm serious about this. Stan will vouch for me. He took it for about a year and said, screw you, I ain't doing this no more. Right, Stan? Okay. 25 years. There's only 2 other brothers. I know it went longer than them. 3 other brothers. Bob Kahn, 71 years from Gulfstream Lodge. Secretary for 71 years. A guy named Stu Bartlett was 30 years at Vero Beach Lodge, and the guy from my lodge, Chris Calp, 26 years. Mary Ann helped him a lot on that job. I know she did. Okay, I know you did, Mary Ann. You'd say you didn't, but I know. As time goes on, you're going to find out more and more because there's 990s to be filled out. There's the Grand Lodge will help you on this for department where you have to fill out your corporation tax every year, the 6125. There's so much you don't realize it's done behind the scenes of a lodge. I get phone calls, probably 4 to 5 phone calls a day about something with the lodge. And I'm sure Ricky did too, because he used to call me sometimes, hey, you ever had this problem? And I'd say, yeah, this is what you do. Or I call him. Taught me how to do your let your pennies make good cents, for example. He said, just take $7.30, times it by your membership, and divide it by 4 and pay it, Paul. I've been doing that ever since I talked to Ricky. That's how we do it in our lodge, because I learned from him. So let me just say this, and I'll end on this. Integrity means a lot. When a man can do a job outside these 4 corners, and people know he did the right thing, I'm talking about his personal job, his life, and Ricky lived up to the tenets of Freemasonry. And that's the good part about Ricky Holt. Thank you, Worshipful Master, for allowing me to talk. Thank you, my friends.
Right, Worshipful Kip Gardner.
Thank you, Worshipful. I'm Kip Gardner, and if it wasn't for Ricky, I wouldn't be here in the Masons. Ricky was not just a brother in the Masons, he was more of a son. We did everything together for the past 25 years. I wouldn't be a Mason, but every month the Eastern Star used to have a breakfast or a lunch for all the worthy matrons of the chapter. And I would come because my wife at that time was a past worthy matron. So I would come, and all of the Masons that were there would say, Kip, you'll have to support your wife. Well, I wasn't a Mason. And I said, I am trying to support her, but no, in Masonry. Well, that did, believe it or not, went on for a couple of years. And finally, I realized what they were talking about. Because I had an opportunity to become a Mason in 1951 when my brother was master of his lodge. But my company moved me, and that ended my course at that time. But once I became a Mason, Ricky and I were together in 99% of Masonic activities. And on personal activities, I had a summer home in Maine, and Ricky and Mary Ann came up to visit us one summer. And Ricky and I both liked lobster, and so while you're in Maine, you must have a lobster. So I made a big deal. I went out and I got Ricky about a 2-pound lobster, and I backed it up with another 1-pound lobster, figuring that he might get enough for once while he was in Maine. Well, that 2-pound lobster was just too much. Ricky finally had to quit, but he loved every minute of it. And since those days, many times during the year, we'd all go over to the coast and have Maine lobster at one of the restaurants over there. But I was always with Ricky no matter what. While we were also in Maine, when at the same time, we told how cold it was always in Maine. So he played it safe. He went out and he bought a nice, big, heavy jacket because he was going to be in Maine for a week or so. Well, he got to Maine and the temperature went to 90. It just doesn't work sometimes. But he was always around. But he drove me wherever I went. It was much easier because he was practically a professional driver. I drove for a living because I was a salesman and traveled all over the country. But Ricky, I think, drove more miles than I did. And so every time we get in a car, he would drive my car, which was great. I loved to have a chauffeur. So we went everywhere together. But one of the trips we made, or one of the many trips, we did about 20 Grand Lodge meetings. And always, it was, as Paul mentioned a minute ago, it was always a very active Grand Lodge. Everybody had a good time. We did have to get on the windows that looked over the swimming pool, but that's a natural thing to do. But we did 20 lodges together, and we always roomed together. So we were much, much closer than just a brother Mason. He was like my son. He also led me, not astray, he led me in many, many of my Masonic duties and clubs. He was president of the Scottish Rite Club of Okeechobee back in the 90s, and as soon as he got tired, he turned that job over to me, so I was president of the Okeechobee Shrine Club, or, yeah, Scottish Rite Club. And when I got into the Shrine Club and became president there, first thing I did was ask Ricky, would he come back into the Shrine? And he did. He stayed active again and helped me wherever I needed help. He was always there. And you just can't find that many people in this world. But Ricky and I were extremely close, and I'll never be able to totally live without him, but I'll always remember him. Thank you very much.
Worshipful Hazel.
Good evening. Let's try that again. Good evening. I'm going to say something a little selfish. That is, I think of more tonight as a celebration of a man's life. That's what we're all here for. And it says a lot. Look around the room, Marianne. It says a lot. What I'm going to talk about tonight is leadership. It's a concept we all understand, but how do you define it? How do you say that's leadership? There are a lot of people who make a living off of teaching leadership, explaining it, but the simple way is influence. And that's what Rick Holt was to this lodge. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say to the past several masters. For 25 years, influence. When Brother Paul brought up his work story about you need to go get this signed, it immediately resonated with me. That's Brother Rick. He was like that in every aspect of his life. Integrity is not something you only have sometimes. It's something you have all the time. And he showed that to us as Masons, but he also showed it to the people that he was around, which is exactly what each and every one of us strive for as Masons. We have a saying, making good men better. That's exactly what he did, not only in the lodge, but outside of the lodge by his example. His example to us, an example of the people who are not Masons. That's our light, being those men, being upright men, fathers and husbands. There's a quote from Benjamin Franklin. I apologize, I don't have my glasses. So, Masonic labor, Masonic labor is purely a labor of love. He who seeks to draw Masonic wages in gold and silver will be disappointed. The wages of a Mason are in the dealings with one another. Sympathy begets sympathy, kindness begets kindness, helpfulness begets helpfulness. And these are the wages of a Mason. And that was Brother Holt. I can remember several times he would call me on his trips from back and forth from work, and he would say, "Mike, we got a little problem. I think I got a solution, but I think we got a little problem. What do you think?" And he'd lay whatever it out was. I'd say, "Rick," being in law enforcement, I always get concerned with people who drive a lot because it's dangerous. And I said, "Rick, you're working long hours. Make sure you drive careful on that roadway. Mike, God's on my side. I'm good. I've got it under control." That was his attitude. It was always positive. Even when he was disappointed with one of us, even when he was correcting us, even when he was, I won't say admonishing us, but Masonically correcting us, let's say, because he knew that digest in and out. And if we were going to go down the wrong road and he knew about it, he would definitely steer us back the right way. Right, Brother JJ? We had some great experiences with that, didn't we? But apparently I have, according to Brother Friend, stepped into a dubious role. And it's shoes I will never fill, but I'm honored to be following such a great man and leader of this organization.
Yeah, I saw that look a few times. We had the glasses down here and just kind of look at you over those glasses. Right Worshipful Jim Green.
Thank you, Worshipful Master. Ricky Holt. Richard Allen Holt. I won't talk about his leadership skills. I won't talk about his knowledge of the digest or how he kept everybody straight in the lodge all the time, because he did that. When I was master, I'm looking over there all the time too. What do I do now? What do I do now? But there was another side of Ricky. We used to go to Masters and Wardens in Kip's car usually, Ricky driving. And I probably went to Masters and Wardens 30 times with those two, and maybe a couple others several times. But there was one thing that Ricky always did at Masters and Wardens. At Masters and Wardens, you have breakfast. Anybody like bacon? No? No? Few people? Ricky liked bacon too. And this is the funniest thing I've ever seen anybody do. Ricky would take his bacon. Do you remember in the olden days when they had rind on the bacon? Old people do, maybe. They don't have it anymore, do they? I've never seen rind on the bacon for probably 30 years. Anyway, they used to have rind on the bacon. We used to have to eat the bacon and get the rind. You couldn't chew the rind out. No good. Anyway, some people that I knew when I was a kid would take a knife and a fork and they'd cut the little rind off, and then they could eat the bacon like a regular person does. Well, Ricky Holt had a whole way of eating bacon. I don't know if any of you maybe you don't all know this, but Ricky Holt would take his bacon, and you've got the little white and brown stripes. He would cut the little brown stripes off, the little white stripes off, put all the white ones over here, eat all the brown ones, and I'd say, "Anybody want my bacon?" That was Ricky Holt. Thank you, guys.
Right Worshipful Leonard Harper couldn't be here this evening. He was going to speak as well. Worshipful Matt Buxton.
Mike talked about leadership, and I want to follow up with support. But I'd like to start with how I ended up getting here. And as a little kid, I remember Rick coming into the funeral home because he was one of the main insurance guys in town. So he certainly held policies for most of the families that we were taking care of. And he was always very attentive and always there for those families, that he would come and take care of everything paperwork-wise. That was my first dealings with him when he was dealing with Dad. But then as a little kid and helping Dad, I had a three-piece suit since I was 5 years old, and I would help Dad at funerals. And there were these, what seemed like giants would show up for funerals, and they'd put on a little white apron, and then they would do their thing, and there was a weird guy in a hat, and all this different stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is the first time, then it was the second time, and then I see it time and time thereafter, and it really, really piqued my interest. And the giants I was referring to was Rick Holt and Jim Reynolds. And they were there at every single funeral. And it just piqued my curiosity over and over and over and again. And it never, once I became older, went off to college, I never really thought about it. But then when I came back from college and was a funeral director, it was the same guys doing it. And then we had a Mason that worked for us and then said, hey. And Dad and I certainly, we applied at that time. Dad went first, I went second. But if it's true to be told, Dad and I did our first, we were the first father-son that did our proficiency in the history of the lodge at that particular time. Once Dad and I were Masons, we then went to Scottish Rite. And who drove us over to Scottish Rite was Rick. When we decided that we were going to do York Rite together, we did it here in this lodge at a festival, and who was there was Rick. When we decided that we were going to join the shrine together, who was there was Rick. So it was already a drive to push and to be that support. Then once I became a Mason, Don Williams threw me to the wolves, and Rick and I knew each other at that point. He says, you'll be all right, you'll be all right. Next thing I know, I'm sitting senior deacon. And it was like a fast track, and all along the time for support, always there. I would venture to say that most of the Masons in this room that have come through over that long period of time met Rick right around here somewhere and was there the first to shake your hand and congratulate you to becoming a Mason, a Master Mason. Most all of us experienced that. Then for each of us going through the chairs and finally being able to put on the hat and stand in the east here and to know that he was on our left was certainly the support that we needed. I've been blessed to be here a few times, and I always knew that I could look over and there was the nod, there was the wink, there was behind the scenes of the phone call to say, okay, we need to get this done. Okay, we need to get that done. And now that I've done it this time, I know there is a lot of things that got done that I didn't even know had to be done. And who did that? Was the man sitting in that chair for the support of every single person that's been through here. I'll say I was blessed and cursed last year to be the honor to take his position as secretary, the first person after 25 years. I will publicly proclaim that I will be master of this lodge 15 more times before I would ever sit in that chair again. I would say it again. And I met Marianne not long ago in Publix, and I said, I have a newfound respect, admiration for both of them, for what that takes. And I've probably apologized 50 times to Mike because God knows the mess that he's got to clean up this year. But it is the sense of respect I couldn't tell you anymore for the fact, especially going through that. Always, always, always the support. And that is what I will always, always remember. No matter whether it was a degree, no matter whether it was a fundraiser here at the lodge or in the park or whatever we were doing, was always there and always supportive. And I will for always respect him and love him for that, for being that constant push that I always needed in Masonry. Thank you.
And most worshipful Stan Hudson, I'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Worship Master. I can't speak from up there. Those of you that have been in lodge with me understand that. I do my best talking out here on the floor. This is where I'm the most comfortable. Ricky Holt. My first experience traveling this road of masonry with Ricky Holt was in December of 1998. That's when Richard Shepard was going to be installed as worshipful master, and I was going to be installed as the junior deacon of that lodge. I was just raised that April before, and Ricky was the marshal that night. And when the worshipful master requested that the senior and junior deacons be escorted to the east for installation, Ricky Holt introduced us as Tweedledee and Tweedledum. That was my first experience with Ricky Holt. And I paid homage to him a couple weeks ago at our installation when I requested that the junior and senior deacons be escorted to the east, and I called them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Ricky held a special place in my heart. He was a mentor. He was somebody that I looked up to. In the year I was senior warden, Cornerstone Lodge owned a piece of property on Dyer Road in Port St. Lucie. And myself, Tom Geralds, and a couple others had a vision that we were going to build an outdoor lodge on that property. And who was the first group to come? Ricky Holt, Kit Gardner, and Don Williams. And they showed up every Saturday until we got that done. And we've continued that friendship, that fellowship, that brotherly love. And that's how we all became plural members of each other's lodges, because of that one event. And it was a sad day when we lost it. But Ricky Holt was there. He brought everybody over. He worked beside us. There was never a time that he just didn't bring himself to whatever we were doing. And I will tell you that the most popular man in Freemasonry is a deputy grand master before he sends out his letters. And I can tell you that there are brothers out there who it is not beneath them to kiss your royal behind for an appointment. And Ricky Holt was not one of those. I had one collar left. And there was no doubt in my mind who was going to get that collar. And he was at Fort Pierce Lodge when I called him back into the Eastern Star room. I said, we need to talk. And he goes, okay, what do you need? Right, Worship, what can I do for you? I said, it's not what you can do for me, it's what I'm going to do for you. I said, I've got one collar left, and it's yours. And he kind of broke down just a little bit, gave me a hug, and he says, well, can I ask what it is? I said, sure, it's Grand Vesuvian. And he said, and what is that? I said, well, I don't know for sure, but I can tell you that if something happens to the marshal, you'll take his place. We were having our official visit in West Palm Beach, and my marshal went down. We were doing it at the Scottish Rite building in Lake Worth. The AC was out. Doug had suffered a heart attack previous to us going into the east. And he had a spell, and I said, Ricky, I said, it's your moment to shine. And he didn't let us down. He did what he needed to do. He made the introductions on the Grand Line and escorted me to the east. And that was a proud moment for both of us. He is a tremendous loss to this lodge. He's a tremendous loss to this district. Because you could always count on a wise word, a sarcastic word, and some fun from Ricky at any given time. And he will always hold a special place in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. This time, I'd like to ask Mary Ann if she would like to come up. And our current secretary is going to unveil the picture.
Masonic assemblage. You will see our past masters. There are no other pictures on the wall other than George Washington, his symbolic place in Masonry. But in our lodge, from this time on, Brother Holt is going to be sitting right here on this wall, overlooking the person sitting at this desk, to ensure that it's always done right and that we always remember the dedication that he has shown to this fraternity.
Mary Ann, we have a plaque for you to hang on the wall.
We put together Rick's Masonic history. Richard A. Holt, initiated and entered apprentice April 4th, 1983. Passed the philograph June 27th, 1983. Raised to Master Mason August 6th, 1983. Worshipful Master of Okeechobee Lodge number 237 in 1988. Served as Secretary of this lodge for 25 years. District Deputy Grand Master of the 22nd Masonic District, 1997. Grand Pursuivant, Grand Lodge of Florida, 2016. Lake Worth Scottish Rite, 33rd degree received October the 13th, 2002. Brother Holt served multiple years as worthy patron in the Eastern Star, numerous Grand Lodge committees, and was highly involved in many of the appendant bodies of Masonry. He truly served with pleasure to himself and honor to this fraternity.
She knew we won't put her to work.
We have one more thing.
Well, not only the inside, but we want it on the outside too. So all of the same things. We have that piece of granite with this picture too.
You guys can sit. You don't have to stand for me. I cannot tell you what this means to me. I don't know how many of you know this, but Ricky was in this very building when he left this world. And he was with the men that he loved so much. These guys up here, they were here with him. When Matt called me, I was in a meeting in Fort Pierce, and he kept calling and calling, texting, and I'm like, I've got to go see what's going on. And when I answered that phone and Matt said, "Mary Ann," I knew something was wrong, very wrong. By the time I made it to the hospital, he was gone. But I thank God every day that he had those men, those brothers by his side, because there was nothing more than his family and his God that he loved more than this lodge, the Masonic fraternity as a whole, and his brothers. I thank you all for being here tonight. I thank my family for being here, his sister, his nephew and his wife, and his brother-in-law, Mike. I appreciate you all being here. Stan and Joy, nothing would be complete without having you here. You guys are so special to us, and you were to Ricky, and he respected you, Stanley. And he was so honored and so proud to have been a part of your line. There were many nights, Monday nights, he would come home. He'd flop down in that chair, and he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do with those guys." I heard as much of it as you did. And yeah, I did a lot of the work, but I enjoyed doing it. I miss it. But I stay in touch with the guys. They've been very helpful to me. They take care of me, and they check on me, and I appreciate that. And even the girls at the Grand Lodge office in Jacksonville, I get emails from them. I get cards from them. So he was known around the state, and he's just, I miss him every day. But I know that he's looking down on all of us. And I know that he appreciates everything that you guys are doing in this lodge and for the lodge and for yourselves. Being a Mason is for yourself more than for anybody else. And I love each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for honoring him in the way that you have. Thank you.